Hey guys, it's Jesse from GameFans.com, and I'm here with Ashley. And today we're talking about Nioh, the PS4, the new, what is it, an action adventure PS4 game
Yeah,
from
that's how I
Team
describe it.
Ninja.
hmm I was really surprised at the influence of Dark Souls had on the series. I guess I wasn't expecting that going into it because I haven't followed the development of it closely, but
Hmm.
there are some serious influences from the Dark Souls series here, and I'm hesitant to say that people that enjoy Dark Souls will enjoy the combat in Nioh because it's so deliberate is the word I guess I would use. What did
Hmm.
you think?
I mean, yeah, I saw the influences too. Obviously, being someone who's played Demon Souls. I haven't actually played Dark Souls yet. I don't think I'm going to, but I did play Bloodborne, so there's that.
hmm
And I came into the game with that kind of mindset, and so
Yes.
I tried to approach it like I would a Souls game, and I promptly got my face bashed in by
That is
the
the same
first set
thing
of
I did.
enemies. Yeah, I think that's kind of crazy how difficult these first, like what, just the first three enemies took me the longest time to go through. And I think that might be a hurdle for the general public. I think maybe they shouldn't have started off the game or the demo at least with those difficult enemies. Maybe start you off with some of the more lenient enemy types if there are any. I mean,
I don't know that if it's the first few enemies are difficult. I just think it's people aren't used to the different play style that's required in this game because
mhm,
while it does take a lot of influences from Dark Souls, it has a stance system and how you approach your enemies and how many enemies you have attacking you really depends on what stance you should be in. And if you're like me and you're not super familiar with like the actual logistics behind wielding a katana, it
mhm.
makes no sense to me. So I'm like, what stance do I use? I don't
Right.
know.
Yeah, I found myself using the standard, I think, horizontal stance
hmm
most of the time just because it's fast, it doesn't use too much stamina, and it allows you to hit two enemies at the very least
hmm
if you're careful about it, which in this game that's very helpful because of how mob focused it is.
hmm
But in the beginning, I found myself, dying a lot, obviously, but also grinding for like a good maybe 30, 40-ish minutes just so I can get some of those later abilities.
hmm
And then after that, I think the game just became just a little bit easier, but not too easy, or at least not easy enough that I actually ended up finishing the demo. I stopped, like I played, I want to say around 3 hours of it so far. And I think that's where I'm going to stop myself because it's a good demo, obviously, and I enjoy the learning experience that, all these deaths and all these, dying and then finally getting past that difficult enemy provides.
hmm
But it's the repeated dying, having to go back, and the whole rinse repeat process of it. I think I'm at a point where I can't progress any further without going back and doing the grind cycle again. That's not something I want to dedicate my time to for at least for a demo at this moment.
Right. I think the biggest change for me, like, I'm just coming at this from a person who loves the Dark Souls series. It's one of my favorite game series. I've played all of them. So the change in combat for me to say it's slower is that the enemies in this actually have a stamina bar that you can see too. And if you actually use all of your stamina, you'll get briefly winded and you'll be exposed. Your character will sit there and you'll pant. And
Mm-hmm.
that's not something that happens in Dark Souls usually unless your character gets stunned in some manner. Because if you run out of stamina, you just can't roll. You can move away, but in Nioh, you can't. You actually have to sit there and let your character catch your breath. So you really have to be calculating with your moves. And if you are as precise as the game wants you to be, I can see it being extremely rewarding. But like you said, I just don't know if I have the patience to sit there and learn the system to make it a rewarding experience.
Right. How far did you get into it?
I played for about an hour and a half, and I got up into the main village there
Mhm.
where like people started jumping out of walls and stuff and doing like Dark Souls scare things. And I was like, oh, okay. So the level design, I will say, I don't know what's up with the protagonist. It's like this, it looks like fan art of Geralt from The Witcher. The main character does, he does.
Yeah, I didn't pay too much attention to what he looked like. I had, I mean, after I put on my armor, I didn't bother
Mm-hmm.
taking it off to actually look at what what his face looked like. But back to the stamina system. I like the fact that the stamina system carries over to the enemies as
Yes,
well.
that's a big thing in Dark Souls. Like it seems like sometimes enemies have unlimited stamina and they're able
Hmm.
to outmaneuver you because of that. And that is not the case in this game. You can actually wind your enemies and they will have to catch their breath too.
Exactly, and then if you press triangle and do your heavy strike, for those that haven't played the demo, the attacks are mapped to the face button, and square is a light strike, and triangle is a more heavy strike that does more damage and expels more stamina. And so when you hit them, when they're winded, and you hit them with triangle, you'll do like a little cinematic, not so much as an execution move, but it does more damage and it kicks them back. And I found myself getting into like this whole dance-ish rhythm type situation
There's
where,
definitely a possibility for combos there, yeah.
right, exactly. And like I would just kind of wait. I would guard my against my enemy, wait for them to approach me, try and stagger them, hit them, and just kind of rinse and repeat that whole motion back and forth until they were dead.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's when the game started clicking with me. But even then, it's still very difficult because as soon as you get this, well, then now you have to deal with multiple enemy types. People holding halberds
I was
and
gonna say if
katanas.
one of your complaints is that enemies in games these days just seem to not matter, the enemies in this game you need to know how to fight what weapon they're holding because
Hmm.
they're all different.
Yeah, for sure. And like, you also have access to these weapons, so you can use the katana. Obviously, is your default, but you can switch to a spear. You can't hold two weapons at the same time, but you can easily switch back and forth between them. So you can have your katana, then you can switch to your spear, or you can have your katana as your primary and your halberd as your secondary, or a hammer or an axe. And getting to use these different weapons and getting a feel for each of them and seeing which one works best for your playstyle is very important to this game. I found myself using the katana most of the time, but every so often I would switch to the axe because it's really good for clearing out enemies, and it's really
Mm-hmm.
good for doing crowd control. There's also the spear, but I couldn't use the spear. The charge up was a little bit too long, and I didn't feel like the payoff was all that good enough. Like it left me way too open, and I wasn't comfortable with that because of how quickly you can die in this game.
Right. I could definitely see that. Um,
Mhm.
one thing I wanted to ask you about, did you ever fight any of the player ghosts that you can summon? The
Oh my,
Rivnits?
oh my God, yes! I made the mistake of trying that like as soon as the game started up.
I did too.
Oh
So
my
for
God.
some reason, these NPCs that you can summon where players have died in the world come into your world as Rivnits, and they are the hardest boss in the game, in the demo, I swear. They are.
Hmm.
So I walked up to one, it's like, oh, level 1, I'll summon this guy and beat him. No.
I was surprised by how difficult they are too, with just being level one. And it's like these guys are carrying, like if you compare your starting character at level one to them at level one, these guys are so much stronger. These guys are moving faster than you. These guys are more calculated than you. It's like I shouldn't be fighting these people. Like there's clear, we are not on an even playing field right now.
Mm-hmm. I think it's an interesting take on the bloodstain mechanic from Dark Souls, though. In those games, when you touch the bloodstain, you just see a phantom of the person that died, and you see how they died. You don't see what killed them. You just see
Mhm.
their last few seconds of life. But this summoning someone in that died with some crazy gear is just, I don't know. I guess if you really enjoy that PvP challenge, then Nioh will be a lot better for you than the Dark Souls series.
Yeah, I liked it once I got a hang of the game. I mean, it was still difficult fighting those level ones, even when I was like level what? I think it was six, but
Yeah.
it's pretty fun. I do want to say though that I was kind of curious about what I looked like from the other player's point of view, like what my I guess Ghost, quote unquote, was doing when the other players were fighting him. I would at least like maybe some reward system for whenever my Ghost kills somebody, even if it's just a small, maybe like 5 souls per kill or something. That's still something that can help me out a little bit. Or
Right.
like maybe you know, your last 5 Ghost kills videos, and I can check those out and see what kind of tactics other players are using against my person, and kind of take that kind of stuff into my own game.
Yeah, that would definitely be an interesting concept. So, based on the demo, what are your thoughts? Will you buy the game, the final game?
Uh, I was thinking about that earlier, and I think ultimately it depends on, as odd as it's gonna sound, it ultimately depends on the starting area. If the starting area is the same one as the demo, there's a
Yeah,
possibility that I won't.
I could see that.
Yeah, because
That
I
whole
know.
little area is just a huge grind.
hmm And I know that I'm gonna be doing that for the longest time. I'm gonna have to leave and come back and leave and come back, or else I'm gonna get stressed. I can't
Mhm.
handle all that much stress. But if it's something completely new and something that's just a little bit more manageable and a little bit more, uh, newcomer friendly, then yeah, I can see myself purchasing this game. What about you?
As a Souls player, the grinding doesn't really bother me. Like I'm used to that.
hmm
um, I found that there was some interesting mechanics that I would like to see further fleshed out that I didn't feel like the demo gave a full um, experience for. The weapon system being one of those. You only get a handful of weapons, and I imagine in the full game there will be a lot more.
Yep, probably.
hmm So I feel like it's a more streamlined experience than Dark Souls, but also at the same time, I would also say that it's a lot harder too. So if you've tried Dark Souls and found that it is not that good of a challenge, yeah, I think I'm going to pick it up. I think I am.
Oh, to add one more thing, you can do the whole inviting somebody into your instance or your game and having them help out with you in co-op.
hmm
I would like to see them introduce a system that allows you to invite specific friends, because that'd be so helpful.
It definitely would. I'm surprised that they took it in a different direction, that you can't do specific people.
Yeah, so am I. I mean, I haven't played Dark Souls. I never bothered trying in Bloodborne, but is the series at a point where you can invite your friends into the game?
Um, kind of, yeah. Yeah, it is.
Mhm.
I mean, it's not explicit, but there are ways that players get their friends into the game with them.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that's all the time we have for today. Um, I guess join us in the future for whatever else we feel like talking about. Until next time, I'm Jesse,
I'm Ashley.
and we'll see you guys later.